hearings. The first item 6.1, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville adopting the 2015 to 2023 housing element.
Wait a second. Sorry about that.
Great. Okay, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'm Kim Obstefeld with PMC, a consultant to the city. I've been here a couple of times and certainly glad to be back this evening. I thank you for having me. I've been working with the city since January to update the city's housing element for the 2015 to 2023 planning period. Tonight we are at the end of the road. It's been a great and actually very smooth process. I do want to give you a brief recap of where we've been and what we've done so far and the remaining steps. Talk through changes to the housing element since we last discussed it when I was here in July. Discuss findings from HCD's review, our environmental review, and then at the conclusion of the presentation ask you to go ahead and adopt the 2015 to 2023 housing element. So just a quick reminder of the update process. We started with a great document that was adopted and certified in 2010, so actually a very recent document. That document covered the 2007 to 2014 planning period. Using that document as a baseline, we updated demographic information, current housing market data, updated policies and programs to reflect community input and to reflect changes to the availability of funding, for example, the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. So with that, we created a draft housing element, circulated that for review at public hearings, and submitted that document to HCD's initial review for conditional compliance. We did receive conditional compliance from the state and are bringing the document forward for adoption hearings. It went to Planning Commission in October, and of course we're here tonight. With your approval and with an adopted housing element, we'll go ahead and resubmit that document to the state for their final review and certification. Throughout the update process, we've sought input from the community, initially with a workshop and an online survey. We did a roundtable discussion session that was very successful with housing developers, members of the nonprofit housing community, and housing-related service providers. We also held numerous meetings with the Housing Committee, the Planning Commission, and we've, of course, been here for 2 previous sessions with the City Council. Just a brief recap of the recent schedule. We initially released the housing element for public review and made it available at the end of May. We took that public review draft forward to the Housing Committee, Planning Commission, and of course here at the City Council in June and July. With your approval, we went ahead and submitted that document to HCD, and it was with the state from July 21st to August 26th. We went to Planning Commission on October 2nd, and they have recommended that you adopt the housing element. And again, with your permission, we'll go ahead and resubmit as soon as possible within the next couple of days to the state for for final review and certification. That can take as long as 90 days, but I've been seeing a much shorter review period from the state. Ideally, if we submit in the next few days, we can get our certification letter by the end of the year, which would be great. So just to highlight the revisions to the document that have been made since you last saw it in July, we went ahead and incorporated the recommendations from the Planning Commission to change 3 programs. Those programs were highlighted for you in the July City Council hearing packet and in the staff report, and then also in the presentation. So again, that resulted in minor wording changes to 3 programs. During the course of the housing element update, the city also undertook an update to the affordable housing set-aside ordinance. That was changed to the affordable housing program, which was adopted in July 2014. There were references to the affordable housing set-aside ordinance throughout the housing element. We went ahead, of course, and updated those references to reflect the newly adopted housing program. We also updated the the master fee schedule, which became effective July 1, 2014. We had initially included the 2013, the fee schedule that was effective July 1, 2013. That was in Appendix B, and then also in text and related analysis, primarily in the constraints chapter. We did go through and correct minor formatting and grammar mistakes throughout the document. And then the last piece that we updated was the preservation quantified objective. At the end of the goals, policies, and programs chapter, there's a table that essentially summarizes and provides an estimate of actual units that could be affected based on the implementation of the policies and programs. Those are separated into 3 different categories. One is related to new construction, one is related to rehabilitation, and the last is related to preservation. We had taken a fairly conservative approach and just based it on preserving the number of below market rate units, deed restricted units that were at risk of converting from affordable to market rate during the planning period. With HCD's urging, we went ahead and opened up our thinking on that and revised that preservation objective to incorporate planned results or ideal results from efforts through a number of different programs and policies. One being the predatory lending and foreclosure prevention efforts, another through the continued implementation of the residential preservation ordinance, and the other to think instead of just the below market rate units that were at risk, but to rather to open that up and incorporate the entire below market rate unit portfolio, and really sort of acknowledging the day-to-day efforts of staff to make sure that those BMR units, excuse me, stay affordable through monitoring and making sure that the appropriate documents are in place as those units change hands and financing changes. Excuse me. We had a very successful review with HCD, a very smooth, very easy review, which is definitely nice to be able to report. Based on steps that the city had taken to meet state housing law in advance of us submitting the document, we were eligible for streamlined review from the state, which meant that they were just looking at areas that we had highlighted that we had changed since the 2007-2014 document. So they weren't opening up every page and sort of picking at details the way they maybe have in the past. We had a very short discussion with HCD with our reviewer once their review was completed. They had only 2 clarifying questions for us and then let us know immediately that they were able to find the draft housing element in compliance with state law as written with no changes. I can't tell you how rare that is. We are the only jurisdiction in ABAG who can say that at this point for this round. So that's really a testament.
Yeah,
I was saying over and over again. That's really a testament to the city's efforts, staff's efforts, the Housing Committee, Planning Commission, Council, on both the planning and the housing fronts. The work that you've done on the general plan, the work that you've done to update the planning regulations, the work that the housing team does on a daily basis to administer programs and actually get units on the ground. HCD really notices that stuff, and they really took note this time of the work that you had done and were highly complimentary of those efforts. So certainly paved the way for a very easy review this time around. So great work on that front. They did make the suggestion regarding the quantified preservation objective. That was not a mandate, but merely an idea that we should rethink how we're approaching that. Environmental review, the housing element is subject to environmental review requirements under CEQA. Because the housing element does not recommend or call for any changes to land use regulations, we found it was appropriate to review the housing element with an addendum to the general plan EIR, which was adopted and certified in 2009. And again, stating that the analysis in the general plan EIR adequately addresses the potential physical impacts from implementation of the housing element. And with that, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have and take any comments, and would like to ask you to go ahead and adopt the 2015 to 2023 housing element and approve it for submittal to HCD for review and certification. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing, so anyone who wants to be heard.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I think it's great that we're in compliance and we're doing the right job here. But just because we're the first jurisdiction with an ABAG to have this certification doesn't mean that that element necessarily complies with the regional plan or a lot of things that the region's trying to do. I think we're operating in a vacuum here. I mean, when I saw the presentation from Oakland and the massive amount of housing that they're planning and the massive amount of San Francisco housing, I think we should be looking at that when we do our housing element, and I'm not sure that we are. And it would be nice if we submitted this to ABAG to see what they think about it instead of maybe just being the first one. Maybe if they might find some changes that would make it more possible to get some of the regional money. Because all the cities are working with the affordable housing problem, and I think getting their okay would probably make us more eligible to get some of those funds. So we might want to think about that. Thank you.
Okay, so here's the document, the Emeryville housing element, 2015 all the way up to 2023. So we spent quite a bit of money on this, a lot of time. The public was very thoroughly vetted. I've been reading in here with the public outreach that's pretty impressive. And so we're going to have this document. This is going to be the law of the land here. And it's a good plan. But what I want to have happen here is I want to have all this work and all this public vetting amount to something at the end of the day. I'm going to read a few things here that the housing element provides for it. And when I'm reading this, think of the Sherwin-Williams project as it's being proposed. Okay, so we're now going to have family-friendly with play areas for children of all ages. We're going to have, let's see, homeless youth program. Let's see, more affordable family housing is what we need, what the document says. We need more affordable, family-friendly. It says we have right now, it's sort of an indictment against what we have here now, because we have it's quote, too many rental and not enough for sale units, close quote. Not enough below market rate housing, especially low-income families, seniors. More amenities such as non-chain restaurants, food stores, parks, and locally owned shops. So there are all these wonderful things in this document that we're going to be approving tonight. So if you look at the Sherwin-Williams project, for instance, as is being proposed, you could never say yes to that project with this document being the law of the land. So the Sherwin-Williams project is just one of many that's coming online. We also have, of course, the public market, all those buildings being proposed in the public market. But just quickly, the Sherwin-Williams project, it's like 850 all apartments, all rental, no condo, nothing for sale. Of the 850, but by far the greatest amount are studios and one bedrooms. There's a smattering of 2 bedrooms and a few 3 bedrooms. And there's no guarantees for the retail to be a locally serving kind of retail. So there's no way, if we say yes to this tonight, that we can say yes to the Sherwin-Williams project, for instance. So we've done that in the past. We've done that sort of behavior in the past. For instance, after we passed our general plan, thoroughly vetted by the public, the first project online after the general plan was passed was the Panera Bakery building, which just turned the general plan on its head. And so let's not do that with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, John Bowders, Park Avenue resident. Also the policy director at Housing California, and we're the state's lead in nonprofit and affordable housing development. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you and to PMC, because the housing element that you have before you is actually excellent. I would ask you to adopt it this evening. I think a lot of people who don't work in the world of affordable housing don't understand how important a housing element document is to the general plan of housing for a city. Some of our neighbors, I won't name them, but just up the bay, haven't done one in 10 years. And so there is a lot of work at HCD to get compliance from other jurisdictions. And so Emeryville has been a leader in the Bay Area on housing and the housing element for many years, and we appreciate that in the affordable housing community, and we know that this is a very good plan. There is one technical grammar error. Everyone Homes in-house program is managed with a tool called HMIS, and it's not housing, it's homeless management information systems, and that's an error sometimes in the document I noticed, but other than that, I applaud the document and I ask you to adopt it.
Thank you. Anyone else to be heard? Mr. Carpio, come forward.
I would like to comment on this housing project, and I have already done so in the past. I do not see any wattage, any question of energy that is going to be produced on the roof of this building here. So what's the wattage per person, per occupant? I mean, we are going to talk about energy for a long time, but if we don't start with the housing, that we are going to have a certain area per tenant or per person, then we have to figure out where we are going to get the energy, because so far PG&E is going to run short. I'm sorry to say that. And then the second, all the people I know, they have pets and they sleep with their pets. And we have homeless here and they sleep on the street. I mean, I don't understand. There is something wrong here. This is a nice housing, so many units and all that, but do you have any cage, an area where the homeless can fit in and be not being homeless when it rains? I mean, is there anything that has been previewed for this thing here? All these 721 affordable housing. Do you have anybody that can afford an affordable housing when they make the minimum wage, or do they have to stick with their friends and their family? I mean, what's the scale here? I'm trying to find out, but it's impossible. I'm telling you, if you make minimum wage, you can't afford an affordable housing. And if you can show me that you can afford it, then I'll be really happy to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to be heard? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and we can hear questions, comments from council at this time.
Mayor Asher,
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank not only staff and the consultants, but the members of the Housing Committee. They have been a faithful, faithful group, month after month, tussling with the hard problems. And I think Councilmember Atkin has certainly been involved in the Housing Committee for many years, and the results of this are this document, which I'm so pleased to hear that Sacramento recognizes the value of it and the leadership of this document. I'd move that resolution.
And I would second it.
Other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, moving